I'm Daisy Parris. This is my show, Clouds for Breakfast. We've been working on this show for 16 months, so it's nice to finally see it up and hanging. This is the painting Storms for Breakfast. It was actually the last painting I did for the show, and the one I had the most fun painting. I almost felt light and free while I was painting it, and I think that comes across in the use of color and the brush strokes and the kind of loose, empty canvas here. I was thinking about Monet's water lilies a lot, which I think you can see referenced in these areas here. And yeah, there's this really gnarly section of paint, which is dried paint taken from another painting and kind of slapped straight on the surface. So there's areas of lightness and tenderness mixed with super heavy, grungy paint, which you can also see in this corner here. And you can see there's a section of text underneath that I've kind of distorted and put paint over. So there's some huge, thick lumps of paint. This painting used to be all red, so it was this kind of scarlet red color. So it's been through a huge transformation to get to this light blue and turquoise stage. I find it quite a positive and uplifting painting, and it references the title of the show. So it's about inviting the weather into your home for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's about consuming and devouring the weather and being at one with the weather. And then onto this painting. This was a fun one as well. And actually, I was stuck with this painting for quite a long time. And you can see there's a lot of these scratchy, frustrated marks, which I actually did with a spoon, which is the first time I've ever used a spoon in my work. And it's the spoon usually that I use to mix the medium with some of the paint. And I was just angry and frustrated that day, and the painting was stuck. But bringing this kind of horizontal direction to the painting made all the difference, because usually I paint downwards a lot, so all the movement is downwards, and it needed that intervention to bring some life back to the painting. And where I've dug in, you can see the red coming through from underneath and the yellow coming through. So it was kind of vital to bring some friction and life back into the work. The text started as one long piece of text, and I tried it on a few different paintings. It was almost like a banner, long banner of text, and it just wasn't working in any form. So I cut it up and I rearranged it, and some of it ended up on other paintings, some of it stayed in this painting, but it just needed an intervention as well. And I used this gnarly bubblegum pink color, which was quite a bizarre choice at the time because there's so many bright saturated colors going on. But it means the text stands up against the crazy colors in the background. So I had fun with that one as well. This is my painting, You Were the Storm. And this is another one where I kind of had to create an intervention to all of the downwardness. So you'll see there's horizontal marks that have started coming in, which is, it's a new thing for me to be trying that. And there's, once again, huge, thick lumps of paint, which is paint that's been scraped off this painting and other paintings and just kind of put on the side there. The painting has been through so many layers of color. As you can see in the top corner, there's a kind of radioactive yellow and green. And I've carved back in to the surface to reveal some of the age and the weathering of the canvas. You'll see that the text has been sewn together quite heavy-handedly and crudely with cord. And so the text physically gets cut up, edited, sewn back together. There's areas where it's kind of deleted out and neutralized again using this unbleached titanium color, which mimics the color of the original tone of the canvas. So the text is also getting as much editing, paint added, taken off, as the actual abstract paintings itself. And I like the idea of stitching the canvases together almost like they're flags, and they can keep growing, and you can kind of fly the flag of your emotions. This part, I might just close my eyes sometimes and then open them again, is actually something my friend said to me just while we were sitting in the car. And I just thought, I need to put that in a painting. So I asked her permission and I put it in the painting. It just felt so tender and real. And yeah, it's quite a heavy painting, but really it's about love and reflecting on people you love and people you've lost. These are some works on paper from 2021. And it's quite interesting to have them hung in the show next to the new paintings. I can see kind of the difference in mark making and gestures. These are all quite structured and repetitive in their gestures. And the interesting thing also is that this is the first time I brought collage into my drawings. So I was playing around with the cutout stars, but then also the negative space and the leftover pieces of card. And they worked their way into their paintings. And I'm still using that kind of process today of using the leftover scraps. And I like the idea that nothing is wasted and everything can find its way into the work. So next we have the big 6-meter kind of centerpiece core of the show. And this is the painting that the show was built around. It started off as just 2 panels, and then I felt like it needed space to grow. So I added a 3rd panel. And the panels got switched around quite a lot. And that's why I like working in panels, so that it's almost like a puzzle you can solve. You can move the painting around and find the composition that works. This was all red at one point, and then all pink at one point, and you can see the pink kind of coming through here. And then whilst I was painting this, I got kind of obsessed with this grey colour, which has a hint of violet in. So it's a slightly warmer tone of grey than just, say, I don't know, a kind of bland, bleak concrete. So then the whole painting turned this colour. And there's sort of interventions of text dotted about the painting, which I like to think kind of guide you, hold your hand, and provide some rhythm to the painting. And this, if you're lucky to see up close, if you look at an angle, it kind of ghost writing. There used to be some text and poetry on there, but it's ended up as a kind of weathered piece of text. So I'm playing a lot with the kind of lightness and heaviness in this piece, and I think this one is really influenced by the weather and looking out my window at the studio and watching the storm and the sky change colour. Yeah, so it had to grow, you know? It needed space, and it needed the time to grow. This is In the Hands of the Storm, and this, I feel, is the lightest painting in the show. In terms of colour palette, but in terms of the energy it gives off as well. And I was definitely surprised when I saw it in the studio and how light it had become, because underneath it was this really dark green all over. And I think with this painting, I've been trying to figure out how can I make the colour grey interesting. And that's been a reoccurring theme in the paintings of this show. And I think maybe the answer to that is with texture and with and by pairing it with other contrasting or interesting colours. So there's a lot of layers and textures in this piece. And you can see here I've physically carved into the painting, and this is areas of canvas literally stuck on. So it's super texture heavy, and I went through a lot of emotional turmoil with this painting, trying to solve it and figure it out. So it took a few months. And in this area, this is where there was some text originally stuck on. It had been stuck on there for months. And I finally figured out that this was the area that was holding me back. And as much as it pained me to do so, I had to peel off the text and neutralize the canvas. And from that point, that led to the next gesture, to the next colour, and it allowed me to solve the painting effectively. And lots of text on this one. It was almost like the text kept growing, and I've stitched it together. Interesting fact, this orange pigment is still wet. It's taken a very long time to dry, so this is the only wet colour left in the show. And yeah, this was a difficult painting, and I think you can see that. You can see some of the frustration, and you can definitely see how much paint it took to get it where it needed to be. This painting is actually about love, although it's quite dark, I would say. Really, it's very tender and about love underneath. It probably has the most structured composition of all the paintings in the show, and I think that really makes a nod to the landscape. It also has some really heavy textured areas. I try to use and collage the scraps of canvas as though they are gestures. And that way it kind of makes sense with the language and the downwardness of the brushstrokes I'm using in the rest of the work. You can see areas like this where previously I had carved in text elements. And there's so many layers of paint on this now that those elements got weathered and there's only tiny areas poking through now. So although there's a lot of heavy texture and carving and quite heavy-handed marks, it is about love and it is about tenderness. And I had fun painting it as well. I think here I literally threw the paint on, and it's kind of magical how many layers of paint you've got in one splat of paint. Yes, it's quite, this is a very tender piece for me. And there's elements where I love this radioactive green against this turquoise. Here there's elements where I've had canvas text stuck on and I've peeled it off, and it left areas of pink paint underneath, but it was interfering too much. It was unbalanced for a while, and I needed to bring this darker green down to the bottom of the canvas to balance the heaviness in the center. And then you've got this light, gorgeous light pink at the top, which reminds me of the sunsets I see out of my studio window with the pink sky. So it definitely references the structure of the landscape a lot.